Hello and welcome to each and every one of you. Welcome to the Living in the Flow show, episode 14. And Tanya and I are very excited with the special guests that we have. And also, we wanted to welcome you to this safe space, to this circle that we create each and every month where we share our experiences of mastery, we share our experiences of embodied realization, how it is to live alongside the human, mass consciousness, all of the challenges, all of the wonderful things, living the parallel life. And most of all, we like to demonstrate what it is like when you can allow to speak from your soul self, to speak from that deep part of yourself that is also a part of you, and that it's taken us such a long time to allow, because of course earth is not a safe space, but we are now, some of us at the precipice, some of us have been allowing for years, each one on our unique journey. And Tanya and I were sharing this unique journey because each one of us are very different people. And about 14, 15 months ago, I was on one of those wilderness walks, and Michael, my soul self, my master self, I was chatting with him, and he suggested that I contact Tanya if she wanted to do a show. She said, thankfully, she said yes. She suggested that we do it monthly. She suggested the name, and 14 months later, here we are, enjoying this sharing and enjoying demonstrating, as I said, what it's like to walk as a master, and what it's like to live a soul-filled life, a heart-filled life in every day, and what it's like to allow that part of yourself, that part of that is a master, that is a soul. And know that in this show we use these terms in a very loose way. We use these terms in a very artistic ways. We don't define them. So please do not try to look for definitions. These are for different times, for different workshops. So, yes, and I am Mikael. You see how easy it is to allow your soul self to come to the forefront, to allow your master self to come to the forefront. And the human self steps back a little bit and allows this master self to be present and feel this vastness that comes with this part of yourself. Feel this vastness of knowledge, this vastness of knowingness that is available to you when you allow this to happen in your life. Feel the brilliance, feel the magnificence of who you really are. And for some of you, yes, I can feel some of you come to that barrier that you have created, that barrier that says, no, not me, it is not possible. I am but a human, I am but an everyday person. How can I feel this vastness of myself? How can I feel this limitlessness of myself? And yet I invite you, Michael, invite you during this time today in this safe space that we co-create together. Feel this barrier that you have put together, feel it melt, and own your vastness, own your soul self, own the possibility, the knowingness, the feeling, and allow that feeling to permeate every cell of your body. That feeling of being who you really are, that feeling of being the master self, the culmination of the dream, the vision that was dreamed by your grand being before the earth was even formed. And now here we are. You can make it real, each one of you. So feel that barrier, feel that boundary melt, and feel yourself this magnificent being. And then Michael, step back. And yes, here it is, Alex, again, this human self. If I can still call myself human, because I am no longer living within those limits of humanity that other people are experiencing. I no longer experience myself as limited, as alone, because I always have that access to my soul self. I always have that access to the communication. And the communication is kind of like a feeling. I feel, and my soul understands, my master self understands, and I understand what he is saying, what she is saying, what it is saying. And you come to a point somewhere where no rules apply anymore. You step over a certain threshold, a certain barrier where no rules apply, and you are very free, extremely free to organize yourself on the inside how you want, because you are one, you are your own oneness, and you can be your own many depending on how you identify and how you act and what you create and how you want to play and what you want to be. And this is what Tanya and I continually demonstrate, how different we each are, how unique, and yet we can come together and we can share and we can understand each other, because there is some kind of, there is this understanding between masters. And oftentimes you don't need words. Sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't need words, and you can have this understanding and you can have this ease and grace of cooperation. And before I keep going for too long, I will over to you, dear Tanya. And again, welcome to each and every one of you.
Well, hello. Thank you to all of you beautiful friends that are here with us. And mainly, thank you very, very much, Linda and Geoffrey, for having accepted our invitation so gracefully, so naturally, because for us, you have been also a very important key in our journey, and that has somehow also provided that what we're living today. If we hadn't come across the teachings of the Crimson Circle, we would probably still be going around in circles. So
now it's just a different circle.
Right, exactly. So then we stepped out of the circle and into another circle, which is completely limitless, expanded, and we would like that. And the reason why we felt it was so special and precious to invite you on this show is precisely because you have been so relevant for us on this journey. So it is a celebration for us, and it is a thank you, and it is an honor, of course, and a privilege that today we can interact in this free-flowing conversation, each one sharing what is coming from your heart, from your soul, from your humanness, from all at the all that you are. So thank you very much. And over to you, Jeff and Linda. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for inviting us to be part of your show. It's amazing because, well, we're all in different parts of the world right now. I was mentioning before we went on air that Linda and I are here in Colorado at our Crimson Circle studio. I'm trying to wake up, even though it's a little after 10 in the morning. And we've got you on both ends of the world holding that down. And I would assume viewers from all around the world as well, which I love that about the work we do. It's so global. I mean, the work that we all do, it's so global. And, it's not one culture, one country. You typically, like when we do an online class, we have people from 30, 40, 60 different countries, which
amazing.
Is really amazing.
It's incredible how this basically what it for me, what it represents is that there's no longer any boundaries at all. Mm-hmm. And so that manifests not only from within ourselves, but in everything we think, say, do, etc., etc. It just keeps on flowing, that boundlessness that we were so afraid of at some point, that we couldn't even figure out how is it going to be to live that way,
Well, when Linda and I started traveling years ago, I think we really got into the hard travel in about 2003, 2004. And one of the first things that we noticed was that no matter where we went, whether it was Japan and Korea, Australia, Germany, Norway,
South America,
no matter where, there was a very, very common characteristic with Shambra, the people we worked with. And it has really hit us right away, because you'd think that there would be such diversity in the audiences that, with different audiences, we'd have to speak in a different way, address a different thing. But the phenomena of awakening and going from awakening into mastery is truly a phenomena, but it's something that there are things that are so common with all of us right now going through it. And I would say in the years to come with the future generations, it's going to be different. But what we found was right away was a few simple things like going into mastery, going from awakening. There's you lose a lot of stuff along the way. Everything seems to crumble, and it's a terrifying period, but it's for a reason. We found that relationships change, jobs and careers change, and your perception of yourself. Obviously, there are these very, very common things that happen along the way, no matter what the culture is. And to me, that was probably the biggest validation of what we're all going through, of anything. And to this day, it still holds that no matter where we go, what groups there are, we all have a very common journey. And if I'd just like to throw in that people ask about Crimson Circle, what it is and how it came to be in that. But what we end up doing is, and it's really quite a niche that we're in. People go through spiritual awakening. An awakening is a phenomena in itself, and it just happens. I mean, you don't decide when you're young or as a teenager, oh, I'm going to have a spiritual awakening. It hits you in the head, and you don't have to be religious or even spiritual. Linda and I didn't come from that background at all, and suddenly it happens. Many people are, at first you're elated because you have such a different perception. You realize there's so much more to life, and you realize that you have angelic origins, and that life goes on even after death. All these things associated with awakening. And you kind of go through a period of euphoria and also searching, trying to find more answers to the questions that are coming up within you. But then at a certain point, you hit this long, lonely, arduous road to mastery. Some people call it becoming the magi. We define it as living as an embodied master on the planet. We don't really use the word enlightenment or ascension. Ascension is when you finally leave the planet. We tend to use the word realization. But you go on this long road to realization, and it's tough. I mean, and I'm smiling because oh my God, hindsight smile is like, oh my God, that was tough. But and Linda and I go through it too. We never claimed that we got into this as enlightened being. It's like, no, we're going to jump into it with everybody else and go through our stuff.
We went with everybody, not ahead of
We
everybody.
definitely went with everybody. But that's really what Crimson Circle does is for that niche. It really is that niche of people who are absolutely committed to their realization in this lifetime, staying in the physical body. And we don't know of any other group that really focuses on that. And it's we love doing it. I mean, I couldn't think of anything I'd rather be doing in my life. And Linda and I both came from the business world and ended up in this. But it's truly amazing. It's difficult at times. We've made some of the best friends and relationships in our life that you could imagine, and then working with the Damas. Well, that's a whole different story. But it's really what Crimson Circle does, and we don't advertise. You can't advertise that. People find their way to us, but it's that we work with people and helping them to understand their relationship with their soul as they stay on the planet as a human. Do you want to add?
You go.
Linda?
No, you have a question. No, let her finish her question.
I was going to say that there were so many invaluable things that didn't always seem so invaluable at the time, but for me, I found them invaluable later, that Adamus, presented to us. Even I remember quite a few years ago when he said, we're not bliss ninnies. And also when he said, even if it looks like you, it's not you. Those two things I've used so much throughout that really tough time. And because because you become so raw and so real, all of that niceness has to go when you're walking through that, through your shadow worlds. You have to become really gritty and down to earth, and
Very
you
gritty.
become dirty, like dirty. I don't mean in a bad way, but I mean that you have to get your hands dirty, like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
have to dig. You have it's really real, because you're sort of welcoming home this really ancient, wounded, hurt parts that have never felt love, that have never felt love. They don't know how to feel love. So it's kind of like you become parent almost to them, because you have to teach them how to love you. You have to sort of show them that, smiley, compassionate face. And so it is all of these kind of things that for me were invaluable, because nobody else was sort of really helping me to really get down to the nitty gritty in this way. Because like as many women, especially from different cultures, I was nice, I was polite, I was giving, putting everyone else first. So
Right.
it was just like such a huge change and redirection, and you have to do it, because otherwise you never even come anywhere close to mastery.
And Adamus has a term that he started talking to us about right away, and it's called makio. It's actually a Zen term meaning spiritual distraction, or as he says, spiritual bullshit. And it's so easy in your awakening to then get into distractions. And distractions being everything: crystal worship, sweat lodges, ceremonies. There's nothing wrong with those things, other than they become a trapping. We've seen many, many people who get into this and then develop a fascination with alchemy, for instance. And alchemy is interesting. I mean, I love it. And there's a physics to it, but then the attraction of like, okay, I'm going to spend the rest of my life learning how to turn stone into gold. That's not the purpose of all this. So there's a lot of distraction that occurs along the way, intellectual distraction, mental. You can study and study and study all of this to the point of ad nauseum and really get nowhere except, clogged up in the brain. One of my favorite things that Adamus talks about is how ultimately all of this, your awakening and then you're coming to realization, is a very natural process. And I think that's probably one of the most important umbrella points, overall points, is, guys, stop working on it so hard. Stop. It's not even the human that actually wants to become realized. It's the soul or the master. So stop working at it. And we came up with a slogan. Linda came up with it. She came up with a couple of them. Early on, we used the slogan, inspire consciousness. But then you came up with a slogan at one point, relax into realization. And it's almost counterintuitive, because you think, well, I have to be a good boy, I have to do the right things, I have to eat organic vegan food, and I can't smoke and I can't drink. And Adamus says that's such a bunch of crap. He said, you just allow it, you relax into your realization. Of course, while you're doing it, all the dragons and demons and everything else are coming out and harassing you. So the question is, can you stay in that kind of that vibration of relaxation, even while all the monsters are coming out and screaming at you?
And pulling the rug from underneath your feet, when you feel very relaxed and easy, and then some aspect comes and it's like, nope.
Yeah, but when that
and you have to keep trusting. You have to keep that like trust, allowing that trust to, regardless of what happens to you.
And I realized when the rug is pulled out from underneath me that it seems awful, but then I learn I can float. I don't need that rug.
Definitely. And that the path shows itself. Please go ahead, Linda. We'd love to hear you.
I just wanted to say something that overall, Adamus has talked and stuff, and he just flat out not so long ago said, Crimson Circle is not even a spiritual group, not even in that category. And he said that right now, when you consider all the things that are going on in the world, that the single thing that could make the biggest difference for everyone on the planet is consciousness, awareness.
Yeah.
And I so loved the beauty and the simplicity of that. And, when we're on this journey and we're trying to allow, and, I always hold on to this at my best to be with consciousness and awareness, because that changes everything.
And just for a little background for those listening and that may not be familiar, first of all, you can find all sorts of information about Crimson Circle at this address right here, crimsoncircle.com. But also, so I channel Adamus Saint Germain. I've been doing so since 2009 on a regular basis. And channeling is not weird. I mean, I shouldn't even have to say that, but no, it's not. It's the ability to communicate with everything around you, whether it's physical or non-physical. It's that simple. But Adamus, I've been channeling him for about, what is that now, 12, 13 years.
Yeah.
And he is a aspect or a kind of a character of Saint Germain. Saint Germain is very well known, particularly in the metaphysical circles. He actually lived on the planet back in the 18th century. So he comes through me as Adamus Saint Germain to differentiate what he's doing with us with Crimson Circle from work he's done in the past, because it is quite a bit different than what he did 60, 80, 100 years ago.
I hope so.
Yeah, you hope so. You hope so. Little upgrade. And Adamus is a character. Now, you'd think that, if I'm channeling a ascended Grand Master, that would be very reverent and holy. And Adamus is not that at all. He is a kick. He loves to provoke. He'll hit you square between the eyes. There's not a lot of coddling and feeling bad for people. He's like, get over it. You're here in this journey to realization. You got to get over the wounds. And then he explains in more detail. But he's been a real character. Prior to channeling Adamus, I channeled an entity known as Tobias for 10 years. Tobias was loving. And
he was so
he was like a grandfather.
He was like an uncle to me. Yeah. He was so kind.
Channeled with my eyes closed and never moved around. When Adamus came in, he's like, no. You open your eyes. You walk around the room. He's very, very interactive with people. And it was kind of funny because quite a few people left Crimson Circle after Adamus came in because of his personality, style. Yeah. And there came a point I thought, okay, my channeling career is done. But then a whole new wave of people came in, and particularly a lot of younger people who really liked kind of the irreverent style.
Directness.
Very direct, and let's get to the point. So Adamus, then Crimson Circle obviously has grown over the years. People really love that difference and the character, and sometimes he pushes me to my limits. Like I'm almost embarrassed. There's things I don't want to say, particularly when he's confronting people directly. It's like I don't want them to feel bad, but he's been incredible to work with, and I have to say that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What about in your personal lives? Does that have an influence as well, and in your own evolution?
You mean Adamus hanging around, or the work?
Yeah.
You'd assume that we have a personal life. That thing is something. Linda and I kind of live in a bubble. We still travel quite a bit, although we've slowed down. But we're always with Shambra. Very rarely, are we with non-metaphysical people, so we kind of live in a bubble. But in our personal life, no, Adamus doesn't come in. No, first of all,
every night he comes to bed with us.
Oh my God!
You're lucky, Linda.
I'm turning red. What Linda fails to explain is that I meet a lot with Adamus at night, like 1 or 2 in the morning.
In our bed.
And, I'm in the bed. He's not. And
she's all talking to Adamus, and, it's quite interesting.
I'm kind of sleeping, but I'm talking with Adamus, and Linda says my hands are waving, and and I'm talking out loud. And so,
Oh,
It's
but
interesting.
Jeff, I can relate to that because when I go for walks, I go to nature a lot, and I do waving hands. So I have to make sure I go where there are no people because I do all
yeah,
kinds of things
yeah,
like hand waving and all sorts, because that's where I get the most inspiration and chatting and stuff. And I'm thinking, gosh, if somebody was to film me, they'd think all sorts of things. But it's just an amazing experience, though. I love doing this. I never realized how amazing this kind of work is. It's not really work, but because you have to keep flowing, it feels like, I was born for this because it's changing constantly, it's transforming constantly, it's constantly asking of me to keep sort of expanding and growing and learning new things, and um, doing this at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever. But it's just like I can't imagine any other way to live anyway, because
yeah,
anymore,
yeah.
because it would just be boring. And do you find that you're constantly like expanding, because these masters, the ascended masters, they just constantly radiate, so you can't really be in their presence if you're stuck, because it starts hurting. I find that if I'm
That's
stuck
true.
in something, like, then all of a sudden I'm in pain and I'm thinking, what's going on? Oh, Saint Germain has been around, right? Because
Yeah, yeah.
I have to move and transform and integrate, and like it's like you quicken your whole this journey. If I mean, it's not like we're going anywhere, but I find that my life has just so expanded and quickened because of this work that I'm doing. So it's not really work. So you've been doing it for so many years. It must be amazing, like the changes that you've experienced within yourself, both of you.
Yeah, within ourselves, and it goes very, very fast. And one of
It
the
does.
sometimes we just don't take enough time for ourselves, and that's
And wait,
probably
I do have a lot of respect for Jeff and Adamus.
that being
Just
said,
needed to.
and we get so involved in the work, and we forget to take time to ourselves. Although we just did take a week off recently, and
It was the first time in how many years?
first time in
Oh, wow.
a long time. And we both find that after doing the channeling, whether it's online or in person or whatever, it's so important just to take time to ourselves. And if I don't, my energy gets stuck, and then I'm in pain and I'm grumpy, and that's not good for Linda.
I don't think she would take it.
No. And so we try to do things like just once in a while have a date night and go out, or just go for a long drive. I love working on the property here in Colorado and the one in Hawaii. I mean, getting out there and doing
Sweaty work.
I love it. I mean, because that moves the energy, and that I sweat and I grunt, and I'm not at my desk, and I'm not talking with Adamus, and that's really, really good. But that's probably one of the biggest challenges, just finding that time to ourselves. And we're constantly in that the flow in the light of Shambhala all around the world. Even when we're not directly in contact, it's still there. And we always tell the staff too, it's like we're right in the middle of the super highway, doing our work right in the road and of Shambhala energy, and you gotta get off and by yourself, take some time off. It's so important because
You have to take care of yourself.
yeah,
It's so common to take care of everybody else, but you really, to be effective, you have to stop and take care of yourself.
absolutely, yeah.
Actually, I've this year, for the first time since high school, I had this very clear: you're gonna take the month of August off, like off. You're not gonna have any sessions with anyone and no lives, nothing. You're just gonna take the month off. And I'm okay. But funnily enough, just like you, Jeff, I'll be going into natural construction. So I'll be learning how to build some natural construction buildings, like really going into getting my hands dirty and huffing and puffing and really having a great time working with clay and straw and sand and whatever, And so it's like, oh, okay, I'm taking the month off, but I'm having so much fun also living a life in a very earthly way, in terms of going out into nature, touching the land, the earth, and all that, and really getting off all of work. And what I find when I do that, and I have to, like you, make a point of doing that, because then it gets easy. It's so easy for us to get into this thing of working with people, being with people, and then you just, oh, wait a minute, I'm getting tired, I have to take time off. But the thing is, then you realize, when you do take that time off, geez, you get so inspired and so creative, and then it's like, woo, so much popcorn.
Yeah. Well, we kind of rejuvenates you, and we really found we have to do that. And it's kind of we're all on the planet. We're choosing to stay here as embodied masters, specifically so that we radiate our consciousness out to the planet. And good Lord, the planet really needs it right now. And it's not about praying for an outcome, nothing like that. It's simply shining the light, and then it's up to people, individuals, or humanity in general, how they want to use that, what potentials they want to illuminate. But in doing this, which I love doing, but it's kind of a weird combination. So speaking for myself, I'm here in my last lifetime on this planet. And I've loved being here, but it's like, okay, I'm kind of done with this. Trying to enjoy these remaining times of my life with Linda and friends and Shambra, allowing a sensual nature about myself to come out that I know I've suppressed for a long, long time, many lifetimes. It's one thing to be in past lifetimes as a warrior or a priest or a metaphysical teacher or whatever. But what I'm finding in this lifetime were very sensual parts, creative, sensual, not necessarily sexual, but sensual in terms of just wowing at life. I mean, this morning I got up early. I was sitting outside and beautiful sunrise in the Colorado Rocky Mountains, and I was just in awe of the beauty, and not trying to think about it, and not trying to say it's beautiful but just feeling that, and truly sensual. And I could just feel it going straight to my heart. But it's kind of a weird journey, because we're learning and growing on our own. We're appreciating my last lifetime anyway. It's kind of like collecting everything for my final trip to, the other realms, collecting all my aspects, collecting all my memories of the planet, and releasing the junk as well, doing this work at the same time, and being here on the planet when things are going so fast right now. I mean, I think it's every day Linda says, things are weirder than they've ever been, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's the norm now. It's going so fast, and people are in general having a difficult time coping with it. The old systems are coming down, which normally you'd say, well, that's really good. But then they realize they kind of needed or wanted some of the parts of the old systems. It's all changing so quickly right now. And just keeping sane is a real task. And keeping your energy level in balance is a task.
Yeah.
But isn't it, do you find that, I find that last few years, I can really now appreciate all the work that we've done,
Yes.
integrating the shadow, just becoming a master within myself, because I can now handle all those energies. And it's like living a parallel life. And
Yes.
In the last episode, I mentioned, for example, even with COVID, because I felt a few years back, I felt this song of my soul, and it has to do so much with sovereignty and freedom. I can't really put words to it, because it is a feeling, but it didn't include lockdowns.
Right.
this song of my soul doesn't include lockdowns, and so I didn't have any. Somehow, like, I had no COVID. I had 3 days kind of rest, very loose lockdown of the whole 2 years. Somehow where I was, the COVID just didn't take. Like, I remember one time, for example, there was a taxi driver had it throughout the whole time, and he had, I don't know, he had 400 passengers during the
Wow.
time, and it never took it, like, because Australia had these extremes, some of the places had the toughest
Right.
lockdown.
Mhm.
And where I was, we had nothing. I mean, we had,
Wow.
okay, within a state, but our state is like 1/4 of United States or 1/4 of Europe. So it was beautiful, like no crowds anywhere, no tourists, everything
Mhm.
was open. It was just paradise, because and this was like a whole that I was a witness, that being, like what Adamus talks very often about, being in a, living that parallel life, not being affected, not even by something like lockdowns or COVID, or like now the financial systems, or any of this kind of stuff. It really is possible, and it wasn't really something that I planned. It was just this idea of a lockdown just doesn't exist in my vocabulary within me, and it never happened, and I didn't have to really do much. I mean, of course, COVID thing and scared people and fearful people were all around me, but somehow I was able to move within those spaces, that it affected me, but in a positive ways. And it was just like month after month after month. And I was thinking, wow, is this even possible? And it is possible. And it's based on all of these teachings, of Crimson Circle, of practicing all of this, owning this mastery, integrating the darkness, letting go of the muck, you're letting go of all of the bullshit, and just being real and raw, and allowing the presence of who we really are, each one of us. It is magical, and it's now really that I can see the benefits of that work. It's really paying off. Do you find that as well?
Yeah, and also what I love about what we do is that it's not a series of steps or
Mm,
processes to go through. It's not like you have to go from one level of being chamber to the next to the next.
mm,
There's not even any membership or dues. It's so wide open. Uh, Adamus does not believe in getting caught up in all the disciplines and everything else. And some people have a hard time with it because they really want, here's the 10 steps you have to follow.
mm,
And here there is none. It's about actually letting all that go. And there's tremendous freedom in that. We have, I don't know how many years of information on the website, and most of it is free of charge. You can really go through there, and there's such realizations, and not disciplines, and not things you have to do, and you're not told what kind of clothes to wear or anything. But you go through there, and it's really what I love about it. It's the history of Shambra. The next
mm,
wave coming in again, it's going to be different. It's not
mm.
necessarily their history, but they can benefit from what we've all done over these past 20 years.
See the results.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm. And the breadth of work that you've done, it's quite amazing. Like, sometimes when I look at you, how many years and just how much material you have created, I'm just like, wow, how like year after year after year, and yet here you are, fully alive. It's no,
Great.
fully
Yeah, yeah.
not, like, because you say that you haven't taken a lot of breaks, and you haven't taken so much time for yourself, and it is just also showing, like, demonstrating that magic, where when you are carried by your soul,
Yeah.
it just, you're in outside of anything that what normal people consider possible.
Yeah, and and we talk about work and not taking too much time off, but on
Mm,
the other hand, we have a pretty wonderful lifestyle.
We couldn't do it if we didn't love it.
Yeah,
mm,
we've gotten to travel the world. We've gone to 38 different countries.
mm,
We've seen just about every part of the world we'd want to see, We've got a beautiful retreat center in Kona, Hawaii now. So we spend our time going between Colorado and there. It's actually a pretty good life. But, so I never complain about it. I'm thrilled. It's just once in a while, it's like, okay, we need to just, Adamus pushes, Adamus is like, okay, we're going to be doing this and this. And then he throws in another thing and another thing and another thing. And
But you were told that, Tobias told you to take control of it and that you needed to set the boundaries.
yeah, but he's an ascended master. The other thing that I always have to want to point out is that people see Linda and I here on stage, but we have an incredible staff.
We do.
Literally located around the world. We're headquartered here in Colorado, but we have staff members around the world. And when we started Crimson Circle years ago, we were kind of going to semi-retire. We'd both been in the business world, and we hadn't even started on anything like this. And then suddenly Crimson Circle popped up. When it got going, we hired a few people to help out with things, and then it just grew and grew and grew to the point where today we have about 30 full-time and permanent part-time staff members located everywhere from Europe to South America, here in the U.S. It's grown into something that I never anticipated.
Well, that's the cool part or the hard part is that it got going and it went viral, basically. Yeah. And that we spent the rest of our lives now just trying to keep up because everything moves so fast in a beautiful way.
And unfortunately, we've got an incredible staff. So many of them, came to Crimson Circle from Crimson Circle. They were Shaumbra. So it wasn't like we went outside. I don't know. Just a few of the staff members weren't originally Shaumbra. And I always kind of wondered, well, how is that going to work for them? But they quickly love the material and love what we do. But it's because of that, having that great team that we've put together over the years that makes it possible. And, like you were mentioning before, we have this incredible website. So much material on it. It's mind-boggling. But we also, we recently, about 2 years ago, we brought all of our technology in-house. We were having consulting companies that were doing it. We finally got tired of that. We brought it in-house, and we now have 9 people, 9 full-time, 10 as of yesterday, on our technical staff.
Which was incredibly important and valuable.
Oh, and they work on, we use a lot of different technologies. They're working on all of that, trying to keep us ahead of the curve, but then also looking at some very futuristic things like the ability to do online, like a Q&A with Adamus or Tobias, where it's like using artificial intelligence to bring up actual quotes. So it's not just, you feel like you're talking to Adamus. So we're working on things like that. Virtual reality classes where, we do a lot of online classes now, but where you can also participate, with virtual reality. So we got a lot of stuff going on.
Well, and it was fun too, who anticipated? So COVID hits and it's like, oh, we had to cancel a lot of events. We had to just step back. But we were lucky because we had the ability to do online classes and online presentations. And more people reached out to us than we ever would have imagined in in regular travel. So
we've got the great studio here in Colorado. We have another one in Kona, and I'm going to ask Jean Dinder, who's working the production desk, if she could zoom out on the camera so they can kind of just see the stage area here.
It's lovely.
It's a beautiful studio. We can accommodate about 60 people in the audience. Yeah, it just kind of gives you an idea. Yeah, there you go.
Bye-bye. How close it come? Nice. You see? Oh, wow.
And then we also, right next to the studio, we have a cafe with a real Italian coffee maker. So you can do cappuccinos and espressos for Adamus. It's a beautiful facility. And really,
very lucky.
As Linda was mentioning, when COVID hit, we were a little bit panicked. We had to cancel 2 years worth of workshops, which had been kind of our
live workshops,
our big force. And suddenly we're doing more and more online, and it's helped our energy level a lot to be
Yeah.
able to just do the online classes. We put in our dues. We traveled 2.2 million miles.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Actual miles. Yeah.
And
Wow.
people have loved the online classes, and so they love it because, as Tanya was bringing up earlier, it's about the safe space. Well, they feel that they could be in that little quiet space that they create for themselves and
Right.
fully dive into the material. So that was a sweet surprise.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I've been used to, like I like the technology. So for me, it's mostly been all online in this way. So it's like a part of this whole process has been the technology, and I'm glad that that you are also using the AI, because then we can create like a really the AI that is serving us, because so many of the new people and young people are really into all of the metaverse, and they think in a very, very different way, and part of them, it feels to me that part of them already is within the internet. It's like they already live partially within that. So it's so important to be able to reach people in this way, and all of the stuff that you're doing, it's reaching those younger generations that
Right.
are identifying with that a lot. I feel
That's true.
Yeah. The technology is really such an important part of what we do. Actually, Crimson Circle, we say our official start was August 21st, 1999. And, Linda and I had no intention of, ever having this grow. It was, I had started talking to Tobias very personally for about a year, finally told Linda about it. And then it kind of grew a little bit locally. Friends would come over for, dinner or whatever, and I'd do a channel. We did this kind of what we call our first official channel in 1999. And we set up just a real crude internet page, so the locals would have access to the material if they happen to be out of town.
Right.
And the minute we put it online, started a website in the early 2000, it just went viral. And in a way, I don't think we could ever reproduce again.
No.
We had no intention of it being that way, but I remember the first month I looked at the web statistics and we had like 50 visitors, and I'm like, wow. And then within 6 months, it was up to, 5,000, 10,000 and growing.
It was so cool. The most fun thing that happened for me was we were getting ready to do our monthly meeting, and somebody walked in, and, just back then, so I just said, "How did you find us?" And I was blown away. It was somebody from Boulder, and she said, "Well, I have a friend in Australia that told me you guys are right here in my backyard, and I better check you out."
Right.
And it was an Australian friend that told the local about Crimson Circle in Colorado.
What's kind of interesting too is that as this really exploded overnight, and it took us by total surprise, because, like I said, we kind of semi-retired. I was doing a little consulting, and Linda and I were both running the consulting company, but very low key. And suddenly we're getting calls. One of the first places we ever went to was England, of all places. And then shortly after that, we were in Korea. And who would have figured? Yeah, and it would just happen
in Minnesota.
But so much of our traveling was not in the U.S.
No.
We did do very few workshops here. It was from all over the world. And again, it was this when I was channeling Tobias, and it was really, he put out that call, and it was kind of like the clarion call or Gabriel's trumpet, but it rang out across the internet, and it drew in just the right people that were interested in going from awakening into realization.
So beautiful.
And in those first 10 years with channeling Tobias, it was about helping them understand that they weren't weird, that they had a lot of wounds, and he really helped nurture that, but that they weren't crazy. And I think that was the most important message Tobias said. And he talked about our history going back to Atlantis and the time of Yeshua 2,000 years ago, and the mystery schools, 300 or 400 years ago. And he said, this is where you came from. This is why you're here on the planet. And now you're at that point of your realization, but you got a lot of wounds, you got a lot of hurts. And he really knew how, in such a beautiful way, how to address that.
Well, his theme even became the most important thing you could do was love yourself.
Mm-hmm. And so it just, with technology, it's brought people together from all over the world. And again, we don't advertise. We did once, and it just was totally wrong. It brought in the wrong kind of people who are more interested in spiritual phenomena, things, which is fine, but that's not what we do.
Ritual.
And so it brought in all these people, and we started traveling and meeting them. And it was, like I said earlier, it was very profound touching in terms of how the similarities with everybody.
How deeply they felt it too was just remarkable.
And then after 10 years of channeling Tobias, one day he said, I'm leaving. He was going to actually reincarnate back to Earth for not for any karmic reasons, but simply to enjoy life. And at that point we thought, well, we're going to be wrapping this thing up. It was 2008 when he made the announcement. He was leaving in 2009. And I just thought, well, whatever, we'll just, slowly bring it to a close. And then Adamus came in and amped things up. And that's been going on now since 2009.
And it's been such a journey, and it's just such a huge meeting point. Like, I think, like Crimson Circle, it also is not utilizing, perhaps that's not the right word, but it serves as a meeting point for all of these people. Like, we're in all sorts of places. Like, I'm in a very remote area, and yet I'm with technology connected with everything that is happening, and the closest friends, the most intimate friends I found through people through Crimson Circle, and we share, like, this sharing with friends, with other Shambra has been invaluable. And if you didn't do what you did, we wouldn't have this meeting point, and we wouldn't have this incredible support that we give to each other that mostly doesn't even become public. Like, there's so much happening in the background that is not even public. Like, and a lot of the people are Shambra that are never on any forums, that are never in any groups. You wouldn't even know, and yet they are doing the most deepest work with the material that you provide, and they're all over the world. That's what I find most fascinating, and that's what's been my experience. And it must just be amazing for you to actually hear those stories where you don't know what you sometimes you don't realize why you're doing certain things, but you say, well, if it even reaches one person, I'm going to do it, for the creation's sake. And yet for you're just reaching thousands and thousands, and have made such huge differences in people's lives.
It's funny too, because we're ministers. We have ministers' licenses, and we've married, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 couples over the years, and other people have just found partnership without getting married through Crimson Circle. And then what's funny now is to see the little kids as a result of the people that got married or partnered together, and now they're bringing their little kids or showing us pictures or whatever, and it's like, pretty wow, sweet. That is really sweet. I mean, that is truly sweet.
Did you either of you think of that when you were 20?
No. I was thinking about that this morning in the shower. It's like, who would have imagined, when Linda and I have been married for 45 years now, who would have imagined back when we first got married that
never
we'd be doing this kind of work?
I never would have imagined it.
Linda went to school and worked as a school teacher for a while. I was in the marketing business and then the aviation business. Would have never thought of this. But now I look at the setup of all the things that happened over the years, And I can see how everything led to this.
Right.
And I was just going to mention, do you find that this work that you're doing now, it actually utilizes every single thing that you have actually done before, whether it was a job, whether it was something that you've trained to do? Did you find that in your lives?
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, everything. From my years as a journalist in marketing, that was it was all about communications, and I didn't realize it at the time. But and that's what we do. We are connecting. You were mentioning before how we connect people. We even call our facility here in Colorado the Crimson Circle Connection Center, and we're connecting people and communicating and distributing all this material. So it's everything prepared us for it.
Everything.
Well, it didn't totally prepare us. I never thought I'd be channeling spooks from the other realms, but other than that.
Oh, it's interesting. I'd like to share a story about what happened with me after doing the sexual energy school teacher training in Holland in 2009. And then after that, I was on the train with some friends, whom I met obviously at the teacher training. So then we became friends, and then we were chatting. And then this guy says to me, I'm seeing you. And you've got this bushy hair like you have right now, but you're all wounded. And then all of a sudden I just closed my eyes and I saw my terribly wounded body just all battered up, and so it was with the sexual energy school and the practice of Aliyah that these really deep wounds of the also, of course, the feminine, but the masculine as well, because then it all sort of ties into one thing, ties into the other. There aren't two separate things, but of course we have lived that duality here as incarnated beings, sometimes one, sometimes the other, sometimes a mix, whatever. But the interesting thing was that was a very key moment right after the sexual energy school teacher training, and seeing my whole body, like it was all cut up into pieces, and there wasn't one place that I could say was not wounded. So,
Wow.
sometimes we share, when we are sharing here the living in the flow, and of course we're sharing our experience of now, of what it's like to live this life in realization, in expansion, always new. I mean, there's nothing we can say. I constantly say I know nothing really, because it's always new. Each day is new, full of new.
I know
it's
what you
just
mean.
a discovery, But sometimes then people think, oh, it's easy for you guys, because no, it isn't. We really did go through the nitty gritty. And another interesting thing was when we did the aspectology in Frankfurt. It was a live event, and at that time you channeled the dark channel, remember?
Yes.
And after that, I had a really challenging experience. So I was with Placidia, my dear friend Placidia, whom is also with the Crimson Circle. She does the translations for Portuguese, right? And so she was lying in the bed right next to me, because we were sharing the same room. And all of a sudden, this really dark ass bed comes and says, just grab her and throw her out the window. And I'm like, oh my God, what's this? And so at that moment, I was just breathing like hell. Just, okay, let me breathe. Let me breathe. And then it only settled when I became unafraid. So at that moment, it was terrifying to have something so dark come from within me, but also liberating, because that's the moment when I realized that all of the demons were mine.
Yeah.
So that was at the same time a very scary moment, but also a really big liberation, because from then on, I never looked for the demons anywhere else. So whenever they came up, okay, this is just me. So yeah, I didn't throw Placidia out of the window. She's still alive and very healthy, fortunately. But just to say, it's these things, they just pop up, and sometimes people get caught up in them. There's nothing to judge. I mean, we've done it all. We've been all of it. We've throughout all of these lifetimes. There's really pretty much nothing we haven't experienced
Right.
because we've been around here for so long. So it's not, when something like that pops up, if anyone is going through that, it's not about going into, oh my God, how can I be thinking something like this or whatever. No, it's just a natural thing. And it's just part of you inviting itself back home, say, okay, so you've sent out the call. I'm here now. What are you gonna do?
Did you ever tell Placidia that story?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Have you ever shared a hotel room with her after that?
Yes, we did.
Oh,
We did. In the
she's
New
bold.
Energy Syncretize.
She's
With
bold.
teacher training. Yeah.
She
She
slept
never
with
was afraid of me.
she slept with one eye open though after that.
Or maybe a couple of swords under the pillow.
Yeah. Well,
And then it's integrated. It integrated fast.
and Tanya, you bring up such an important point, though, that once you stop putting these demons outside of yourself, like some alien being is trying to possess you or whatever it happens to be, you take responsibility. At first, it's shocking because you are confronting a darkness, which is actually you, it's frightening, and then you feel almost pathetic that that's part of me. But you realize then you were just projecting a lot of those old issues, imbalances into other things in life, into outside forces. Then you can actually deal with them, and you start to realize that there are a lot of old wounds going back for lifetimes and lifetimes that are deeply suppressed. And it's time that you took responsibility again for your sovereignty, and you basically release those dark energies. You don't battle them, as you found out. You don't battle them, but you release them.
Impossible to battle them.
Impossible. They know you better than you know yourself.
Yeah.
And
they will always win if you're trying to battle.
Yeah, and the one thing again that we talk about in aspectology and also in the sexual energy school is there's no battling them, but what integrates them and changes them from being these dark demons is to love yourself. And that was the hardest thing a human will ever do. It's easier to love somebody else, but
Totally.
that's what integrates them. And you're not trying to destroy them or annihilate them. You're just letting them know that it's safe to come back home now.
Yeah, no matter how scary, whatever it is,
it's
the
scary.
moment you realize it's just you, something clicks.
That's
and
right.
then that possibility to love that part comes in.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
once you start loving those parts, then it just becomes easier and easier and easier, and it just all falls into place, really.
That's
But
right.
it is really scary. So it's scary for everyone.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know of anyone who's gone through integration who hasn't had all of these scares.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
you go.
I was going to say it'd be nice, for future generations not to have to go through some of the dark
that would
stuff.
be wonderful.
But we've got great stories, over the years, and we've gone through some tough stuff, and hopefully they'll have it easier. But I still think there's darkness, there's challenges within everybody, and sooner or later you have to go through them. You can't sugarcoat them. You can't process or counsel them. It's a matter of ultimately just addressing, loving yourself again.
Yeah, definitely.
And I was going to share my experience with you. I was at Act of Consciousness in Byron Bay now a decade ago.
Wow.
And it was wonderful. But the most memorable experience was because I was taking photos, and then Adamus looked at me right in the eye at one point. And it was only a couple of seconds, and yet so much has transferred in that look. And I knew exactly what I needed to go and do. So then I went home, and it took me a decade, but I did it. And it was all about this, integrating the shadow to become that gritty person, to walk down into the dungeons of myself, to face the fear and anxiety and all of that, like Tanya so beautifully explained in her way. But this is what I find, that when you channel Adamus, well, both of you really, when you channel Adamus, it only sometimes really you need few seconds, because there's just such a transmission of energy. If you are open to understanding, you know exactly. I mean, at that time, I wasn't able to really give words to what I understood. It had to unfold, but I had a job.
Mhm.
And it was just, I so remember that those couple of seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't even have to throw anyone out of the hotel room.
By the way,
But I would have liked to, because I was such a battle person. I had swords. I still
Yeah.
have swords, but I would have loved to.
and it's funny, when I started channeling Adamus, of course, he had me opening my eyes, and you probably remember that the first time it was
Oh,
a real
yeah.
challenge, because Adamus is like, okay, he's going to open his eyes now. And I open my eyes. I'm like, oh, geez, close my eyes and open, close. So it was me battling Adamus
It's pretty weird.
through my eyes. But it's funny, as he's walking around and talking to people, the intensity that I feel through my eyes with the audience. And people say that even when I'm channeling, my eyes change, when Adamus
They
comes
do.
through. But it is so intense at times. You just seeing the people, I'm not just seeing them for what they are sitting there in the moment, but I'm like seeing their past lives and then seeing their energy. And the intensity sometimes is what trashes me afterwards. It can be exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why it's so important to take that time off afterwards
Yep.
to replenish and to rebalance, and basically to keep the frequency high and expanded, and so that you don't
Right.
then have
Yeah.
just crash.
Or just
Yeah.
crash or just burn out. I mean, I
Yeah,
think for
exactly.
anybody, for all the viewers today, this journey is pretty challenging, and the world is really challenging right now. And you've got to take time to really take care of yourself, do things you love to do, or sleep, or go for long walks, have a hobby, because it is very, very intense. And if you're always immersed into it, even if you not directly working, like doing counseling or something like that, but even if just being in these energies these days is overwhelming. And the first place you start noticing it is in your brain. It's just not it's not kind of flowing in ease, and suddenly there's a lot of commotion in the brain, and then pretty soon you start noticing it in your body, aches and pains, and maybe not major, but pretty soon your body's hurting, and that's where you have to realize that you really need to just take some time to recharge and allow. It's so important.
Yeah, definitely. And the fact that that we can be compassionate enough with ourselves to take the time to really know, to listen, compassionate enough to say, okay, now it's time to retreat, and you do whatever you want to do, you retreat, and not to be concerned what people are going to think, if people are going to whatever, think you took off all of a sudden and didn't, so whatever. So you start becoming, you don't become rude, but you become very, very, very self-aware and very compassionate for yourself in the same way you would be with anyone else. So the thing of putting others first just disappears in a sense, I would say, because when we are putting ourselves first in that sense, we are putting everyone else first too.
Right.
Because it's walking our talk, it's being that radiance and keeping it. So it's fundamental that we can retreat, remove ourselves from whatever, wherever, whoever we are with, if in that moment it's just too overwhelming. Basically, because we're taking care of keeping that radiance, we are putting everyone first, including ourselves. So that's the big difference, is before we had this thought of putting others first, and now we're putting everyone first, including ourselves.
Yeah, and you always point out the thing that they say on the airplanes when the oxygen mask comes down, uh, take care of yourself first, because if you're fainting or whatever,
Can't breathe.
you can't help anybody else. So take care of yourself, then you can help
Right.
the others.
Yeah. I
It's
find that's
interesting.
really relevant.
Yeah, it's interesting over the years we've been doing this, 20 some years. When we first started doing it, we people were a little skeptical, or people would say, well, that's some sort of woo woo crazy cult or whatever. So they were much more, they ridiculed kind of, and it didn't really bother us. But what I've noticed over the years, particularly lately, last couple of years, is there's less and less reaction from non-chambra
Right.
on the outside, from
Yeah.
regular people to what we do, and it's not considered so weird or so crazy anymore. And I really think that humans right now are looking for some answers. And whereas 20 years ago they might have thought this was a bunch of woo-woo stuff, I think right now they want to actually believe and to know that there is more out there, and that life isn't just going from day to day, and then you're born, you get a job, you get married, and you die. I think they really want to believe that there is something more, that there are other realms and realities that you can connect into, that you actually do have the ability to guide your own life. It's not just being kind of a pawn in a big game, and in that there is something called sovereignty and free energy. So what I've seen, and I think really the culmination over the years, is that humanity is changing. They're looking for answers in other places now. They didn't find it in the churches. They didn't find all of it in science. They're looking, and I think there's such a responsibility on all of us, on Linda, myself, on our staff, on Shambhala around the world, to uh, to be the way showers, to say yes, there is a different way. It's not always easy, but there is a different way,
Hell no.
and there are answers out there, and ultimately it all comes down to everything's within. And I think humans right now are almost on the verge of being desperate to feel that, and I think that's such a important reason for all of us to stay on the planet right now, uh, to be that standard, that example of that. And they may never meet us in person, but they're picking up something in mass consciousness.
I think there's a beauty out there too, that what we've actually noticed lately, because with things calming down a little bit, we've had more people coming to events again, and we're seeing more and more young people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they automatically feel into the energy and of what we're doing and how it's defined. And it's interesting to me that part of it, I think, is that the younger people, they didn't grow up stuck in a lot of religious stuff, that
No.
their parents didn't do that to them. So they already have a more open-minded view because they don't have that religious overlay
Right.
on them. And like Jeff said, they just know there's something more, and that
But they don't know what it is yet.
Exactly.
Right. I think these next a few years on the planet are going to be huge in every way. And I guess anytime you could say that, but now more so than ever. And everything's at interesting tipping points. And I don't mean that from a fearful way, but everything is changing so fast. And what happens here in the next couple of years is just going to be so important for what happens after that.
Truly.
Definitely. And what I find is that when we are basically when we're just fully living within our embodied experience of whatever is coming up in the new now, in our new earth, in each new moment, the fear just vanishes. So there is no fear really, irrespective of what these next 2 years will bring.
Right.
Because there are different kinds of potentials and it could go in different directions, but the fear is not there. We don't really, I find that for me, that I don't really care which direction it's going, because I know that in my now I am fully here, enjoying each moment, and that's all that matters, really. And so whatever comes next will be a result of that, for me particularly, but of course also in terms of consciousness for each one of us that is within that.
Right.
It does create a big difference and a huge landscape of other possibilities that
Right.
wouldn't be there if we were afraid of what is going to happen in the next 2 years. What do you find in your own particular experience?
I just that was a question, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was.
the there's a lot of different ways to answer that, but the next couple of years, I think, for humanity is just people not freaking out about things that are happening,
Yeah.
but I don't see that happening. Not getting into the duality of things, but I don't see that happening. I think there's just going to be such tremendous energy clashes, not necessarily
Yeah.
physical, but energetic clashes on the planet, and there's going to be some who kind of get through it without too many wounds, and some that just aren't going to be able to cope with it.
Yeah. And there's the issue of life and death, and us overcoming the idea that going through a transition would be a bad thing, whereas maybe for some it will be the best possible thing to go
Right.
through a transition and then come back in again
Come
from a
back
different
in.
point of consciousness.
Yeah, yeah. But I
So
think no matter what, it's going to be interesting, and we're doing what we love to do as part of that. And Shambra all around the world right now, the most important thing for them to do is just let their light shine, radiate their
yeah,
consciousness, and
yeah,
without agenda, without
Right.
a particular outcome. But it's like when you radiate your consciousness, you illuminate potentials that people might not have otherwise seen.
right,
Those potentials in the
exactly.
dark, and then it's up to them to choose it, and
Right.
we have to be okay with the choices that they make.
Yeah, it's not like we can say that, we're here with the expectation that this is all going to become a perfectly balanced world, etc., because that's totally impossible to
Mhm.
envision as whatever it is that's going to be. I mean, there's so many different ways it can go. So living in expectation would be even disappointing or
Yes,
frustrating
Right.
for us along the way. There's
definitely,
no point.
definitely.
Yeah. Well, I don't know where Alexis has gone. Probably she had
Yeah.
some issue with the internet.
Uh, Out there in
But
the outback of Australia, yeah.
yeah, and well, for her at that hour, who knows? Who knows what went on?
Oh,
What
heck
went on
yeah.
in the lines?
Well, she might have just ascended during the show here. Who
Yeah.
knows that? That'd be a very popular show then. Yeah.
Then, yeah, who knows? Well, stuff happens.
Anyway, well, if
Well,
she
but
doesn't come
I
back on, give her our best wishes.
yeah, I would like to wait for her, but I feel we're coming full circle with this. I don't know if that's your same feeling, if you agree with me, but like
Yes.
we've sort of wrapped it up here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we definitely appreciate the time and spending with you, but
Thank
also the
you.
time zones that you're in. We
It's
appreciate.
amazing. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And
We are
hope
so thankful.
to see you online or in person
Yeah.
sometime soon.
Oh yeah, I'll go for the second option.
Good, good, good. Well, come on to
Okay.
Colorado or over to Kona. It's a little bit of a trip for you, the other side
Or
of the
even
world.
here in Portugal, who
In
knows?
Portugal, yeah.
If you come over for holidays, even not only for work.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. It's been a delight being with both of you.
Love your
And
energy.
like I said,
Thank
hope to
you.
see you
Thank you
soon.
very much. It's been a privilege and an honor. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Um, so, I just like to quickly thank our guests and also everyone who's been on this show. So I put in the outro, but again, I came back on just to thank you all. Thank you so very much for being here with us, for tapping into the energies, for bringing your presence, your light, your brightness, your everything, your enthusiasm, your celebration. Thank you very much. So after the outro, who knows what comes next? A huge hug and see you in September. There will be no Living in the Flow in August, but we're back in September. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you very much.